started, I'd like to officially welcome you to the 4th annual University of Miami 3-minute thesis competition. I'm Tiffany Planton. I work in the graduate school, and I will be your MC for this evening. At this time, I'd like to invite the Dean of the Graduate School, Dr. Willie Prado, to come forward and formally welcome you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a full house tonight, so that's wonderful. I'd first like to thank and congratulate all of the participants this evening. Obviously, we wouldn't be here, literally, if it weren't for you all. So we're delighted, and we really are looking forward to seeing your respective 3-minute presentations. It's a terrific event that really highlights the very best of graduate education and really showcases some of the phenomenal work that you all are doing, so congratulations. A very special thank you also to our distinguished panel of judges this evening. I'll start. My team told me that I couldn't speak. In spirit with the 3-minute thesis competition, I couldn't speak for more than 3 minutes. So it's going to be very brief. Introductions first, the chair of our Board of Trustees, Hillary Bass. Second, our provost or executive vice president for academic affairs, Jeffrey Dirk. Third, our Dean of the School of Communication, Karen Wilkins. And last but not least, the Dean of the School of Law, Tony Verona. And before I turn it over, I really would like to thank my graduate school team. They really are the ones that do all the heavy lifting. So thank you all very much for making this a great event. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Tatiana Perino, the Associate Dean of the Graduate School, who's going to tell you all the instructions.
So thank you very much and welcome. It's not an easy task for these students. They're very busy people, and they've taken a lot of time to put their words concisely into writing, to practice preparing compelling visualizations, and also to practice preparing and delivering their talk. They've had a lot of support, and so we want to make sure to thank their advisors, their faculty members, our colleagues at the University of Miami Writing Center, as well as at the university libraries, including the Creative Studio. We'd also like to thank everybody who took a part in this, including the Topo Career Center. In addition, we'd like to congratulate those schools who held preliminary rounds for the 3MT. This is a really important professional development experience for students. And at the School of Architecture, Arts and Sciences, Business, and Engineering, many more students had the opportunity to benefit from this. So we'd like to thank the deans and associate deans there. So what are the rules? The most important rules are that they must give their talk in 3 minutes or less. There's a very big clock here that's going to be counting down. It will keep you on the edge of your seats, just as it will us and them. It will beep at the end, and it's very important that students stop at that point. Otherwise, they're disqualified. They can only have one slide, static, no motion, no video. No costumes, no props. You can imagine the kinds of things that have happened in these events in other places. I have some requests of the audience, and that is if everybody can take a moment to silence your cell phones. You can imagine with a 3-minute talk, even a small distraction can really throw people off. If you must talk during the event, please wait until between the sessions. They only last 3 minutes, and there will be about a 1-minute break in between, so you're free to get up and leave at that time. Concentration is really important. In terms of the agenda for today, we'll have the great speakers speak to you today, and then while we're tallying the votes, you'll have an opportunity to vote. The audience vote is almost as important, if not more important, than the judges' vote, so please participate. It'll give participants an idea of how they're doing. Then we'll break for the networking event, also a very important part of today. And then at the end, we'll announce the winners. If I can leave you with one thing, it is that during the networking event, I encourage you to talk with each other. It's unusual for us to get out of our classrooms and labs and offices to meet with people from different disciplines, and it is an extraordinary opportunity to connect with people in different places. And so with that, I bring back Dr. Tiffany Planton, and enjoy.
Okay, so our first competitor is Michael Connelly. He is a PhD student in the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. The title of his dissertation is Interactions Between the Coral Innate Immune System and Coral-Associated Bacteria Communities. His advisor is Dr. Nikki Traylor-Knowles.
Tropical coral reefs are the world's most biodiverse marine ecosystems. Stony corals, which are related to jellyfish and sea anemones, build the structural framework for these reefs by secreting calcium carbonate skeletons that accrete over millennia. In this way, corals create massive structures that are visible from space, such as the Great Barrier Reef or our own Florida Reef Tract. These reefs are home to thousands of fish and invertebrate species and provide invaluable ecosystem services to human coastal communities throughout the tropics. I think all of the reasons why reefs are so important are captured in this aerial photo I took of Wanlitung Village in southern Taiwan during my field research there. You can see the modern coral reef growing out along the shore, as well as the small fishing village that has sprung up next to it, with a few seafood restaurants, snorkeling shops, and hotels. However, the cliff in the background is also a fossil coral reef that was uplifted over 3,000 years ago. So you can see just in this one image how important reefs are, both in our present moment and throughout the geologic past. But what is truly remarkable is that the success of reef-building corals throughout the tropical oceans is largely due to corals' partnerships with a variety of symbiotic microbes, most notably algae that live within corals and help them meet their energy requirements, as well as a large diversity of bacteria, viruses, and other microbes that live on and within coral tissues. My research is focused on understanding how corals use their innate immune systems to interact with symbiotic bacteria communities that live within coral tissues, much like how we have communities of bacteria that live within our guts that help us digest, metabolize, and protect us from diseases. The importance of these coral-associated bacteria has been ignored for decades, but are being increasingly recognized for their roles in providing corals with additional vitamins, nutrients, and antioxidants, as well as protecting against infectious diseases. My thesis results demonstrate that corals with more stable bacteria communities during acute heat stress have less severe changes in the expression of stress response genes, suggesting that certain coral-associated bacteria may enhance coral heat tolerance. At the University of Miami, my research has taken me to reefs in Florida, Costa Rica, and Taiwan. And in each of these places, I have seen just how reliant coastal communities are on healthy coral reefs for food security, coastal protection, and economic opportunity. As anthropogenic climate change and ocean warming continue to devastate the world's coral reefs, scientists are considering increasingly drastic intervention strategies designed to increase the resilience of coral reefs against environmental stress. My research results emphasize just how important coral-associated bacteria are to overall coral health and are among the first steps towards creating targeted probiotic treatments that can boost coral health and mitigate coral bleaching and disease impacts. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to competitor number 2, who is Donnie Garcia Navarro. He is a master's student in the School of Architecture. The title of his thesis is Atomized Hospital, the Patient Room at Home. His advisor is Dr. Rudolph L. Curry.
surge in population, inefficient healthcare, and inaccurate diagnosis urgently promote a different kind of architectural intervention. The design of healthcare spaces have constantly evolved throughout history and reflect the current norms in culture, science, and technology of the time. With technological and dramatic advances in healthcare practices, we have achieved the ability to live longer, prevent illnesses, and recover from serious injuries. With current hospitals are also playing a key role in making these so-called new hospitals obsolete. Massive hospitals are being constructed, and the different massive hospitals are being constructed, and the evolution of the different competitors. My thesis proposes to create a different type of architectural design, which will introduce interactive rooms that will bridge the gap between the healthcare environment and the population needs of our community. Through this design, we will be reconnecting this unique room into the environment of the architectural design. With this, we will be able to promote a healthy lifestyle and be able to give the patients a new way of forming into the hospital. Urgent care will also be something that the design of this space will be able to contribute and communicate with the technology of the room. It will also promote a different type of architecture, which will introduce interactive rooms that will reconnect to the hospital, bringing a healthy lifestyle to our environments. This unique room type will be able to promote this healthy lifestyle and be able to move throughout the side of the building. It will be able to promote the history, the healthcare, and it will also be able to deliver it. Thank you.
Okay, the next competitor is Julius Dewald, a PhD student in the Abbott Center for Ecosystem Science and Policy. The title of his dissertation is The Social and Ecological Impacts of Conservation near South Luangwa National Park, Zambia. His advisor is Dr. Douglas Fuller.
When you envision Africa, what comes to your mind? I imagine that many of you think of scenes of wildlife and vast open savannas. Yet, of course, it's essential to realize that many people live there as well. In fact, within recent decades, there has been a drastic increase in the human population of Africa.
In response to this growing human population, there has been international concern over the conservation of wildlife and securing further economic developments for local communities. Traditionally, the conservation of wildlife and other natural resources has depended upon the creation of national parks, which separate people from nature. Yet within the recent decades, there has been a push towards creating community conservation programs that aim to ensure economic development and to achieve conservation goals through the decentralization of natural resource rights. My research focuses on one such community conservation program in Zambia, next to a famous national park called South Luangwa National Park, and my community conservation program is the Lupande Game Management Area. My research focuses on investigating the effects of current conservation efforts using a mixture of interviews with local stakeholders and remote sensing work with satellite imagery. One of the main focuses of my interview work was to understand what were the community concerns with current conservation policies. They told me that a loss of woody canopy cover in the game management area due to illegal practices and poor land use planning was a major concern. My analysis of the interviews revealed to me that any efforts that are needed to manage this and other problems like it are impeded by disputes of land use rights between local community leaders and government agencies. To further investigate stakeholder concerns, I attempted to quantify the amount of canopy cover loss within the game management area using 30 years of satellite imagery. My analysis thus far has shown that there are indeed significant levels of canopy cover loss within the Lupande game management area. In fact, 75% of this woody canopy cover loss was found within 4 kilometers of a road, which is where people live. My analysis has shown that my results demonstrate that the current community conservation program indeed struggles to protect the natural resources that are essential for both wildlife and people alike. My project highlights that to effectively plan for conservation, insights into both local community perspectives and into the regional ecology are essential for ensuring successful implementation. Thank you very much.
The next competitor is Vanessa Lara. She is a PhD student in the School of Education and Human Development. The title of her dissertation is Food Quality versus Food Quantity on Weight Loss and Metabolic Markers of Obesity. Her advisor is Dr. Wesley Smith.
Just eat less and exercise more. That's what every single person who has tried to lose weight has heard at some point. But is it really that simple? It makes sense to think so because the cause of obesity is an energy imbalance, as in more calories in than calories out. So yes, in theory, that's the answer. But in practice, not always. Besides failing to consider environmental and psychological aspects that lead to obesity, the simple eat less and exercise model also fails to consider other physiological mechanisms that take place as people gain weight, such as hormone dysfunctions, altered appetite regulators, chronic inflammation, and the gut microbiota. The gut microbiota is this community of microbes that reside in your intestines that are vital to your health. They interact with everything, as you can see above, from our hormones to neurotransmitters, gene expression, and very importantly, nutrient absorption. This microenvironment is so unique that while we're all 99.9% alike genetically, we're only about 10% alike in our microbial environment. Imagine Anna and Susie are twins, and they're following the same diet. They go out and order the same 300-calorie salad. While Anna may absorb 250 calories, Susie may absorb them all. Add those extra 50 calories every day, and Susie, in 1 year, will be about 5 pounds heavier than Anna, following the same diet. It's not genetics, it's the microbiome. And so we're not just what we eat, we are what we absorb. But the good news is that also unlike genetics, this microenvironment can be altered through lifestyle, including diet and exercise. So for my project, I wanted to compare the effects of 2 diets, along with exercise, on the microbiota and on other biomarkers of obesity. On one hand, I had a typical weight loss diet, count calories, cut carbs. On the other, I told them, eat whatever you want, as much as you want, as long as it's whole foods. Eliminate processed foods. And our results indicated that while all subjects lost weight, regardless of diet, not all exhibited improved biomarkers besides the weight loss, indicating not all have favorable results. So it just doesn't work for everyone. It is time that but they did exhibit changes in the microbiota, which is very beneficial for us. We're working on examining the relationship between the microbiota and those biomarkers, and whether or not there's any relationship between the responders versus non-responders in terms of the microbial community. It's time that we say goodbye to one-size-fits-all diets and weight loss gimmicks, and say hello to this era of personalized healthcare, when people like Susie can have a chance for better health. It's not about food quality versus food quantity. It's about food quality and quantity that best suits you. Thank you.
The next competitor is Benjamin Borenstein, a PhD student in the Miami Herbert Business School. The title of his dissertation is Computing Closeness, Differences in Online Pro-Social Behavior Across Device Mobility. His advisors are Dr. Claudia Townsend and Dr. Chalar Ermak.
In America today, there are over 1.5 million charities donating food, shelter, and other vital resources to those in need. Take a moment and consider the last time that you made a donation to charity. Chances are, many of you made this contribution online. Charitable organizations raised over $10 billion through digital marketing in just the past 5 years alone, and this trend is only projected to persist. The digital donation shift is driven by a rise in mobile giving, where online revenue is increasing among donors who are using devices that are more mobile, such as smartphones, compared to less mobile, such as desktops. Yet, despite the strong trend in mobile giving, little research explores the impact of device mobility on donation behavior. My research addresses this important issue and reveals that when donors are using a device that is more mobile, they increase their charitable contributions to help recipients who are far away from them. But when using a device that is less mobile, they increase their contributions to help those nearby. Now, why would device mobility influence who and how much donors choose to help online?
I find that this effect is driven by a donor's perception of how easy it is to move with their device. When a donor perceives it easier to pick up and move their device, they perceive themselves to be closer to recipients who are far away from them. But when a donor perceives it less easy to move with their device, they perceive themselves closer to those nearby. This novel association between device mobility and perceived closeness is of great consequence, considering that it's known that when a donor perceives themselves closer to recipients, they increase their charitable contributions. I test the effect of device mobility on donation behavior across 7 different studies, 5 of which tracked real donations. The studies take place online, in a controlled laboratory, and through partnership with charitable organizations to raise donations through in-person canvassing and social media campaigns. For example, I partnered with a charity called Guitars Over Guns to run a Facebook campaign to raise donations for the charity's headquarters located in Miami and Chicago. I targeted over 11,000 Facebook users living in the Miami area on a device that was less mobile or more mobile, and presented them with a donation plea to help recipients either nearby in Miami or far away in Chicago. And what I found is that when donors were using devices that were more mobile, such as smartphones, they donated over 2 times as much money to help recipients who were far away, whereas when donors used devices that were less mobile, they contributed more to those nearby. Taken together, these findings provide important implications for charities and their mission to help those both near and far through local and global digital fundraising. Thank you.
The next competitor is Olivia Altamirano. She is a PhD student in the College of Arts and Sciences. The title of her thesis is Caregiving for a Loved One with Dementia. Her advisor is Dr. Amy Weissman de Mamani.
Life expectancy is increasing, and one important implication is that rates of dementia are rising exponentially. You'll probably know someone who develops dementia, become a caregiver for someone with it, or you may even develop the illness yourself. Symptoms of dementia become more and more debilitating as time goes on. Unfortunately, there's no known cure, and it almost always accelerates death. Imagine your mom invited you over for dinner and made chicken soup with a scoop of ice cream in it. Imagine she forgot who you were. Imagine she got lost and wandered into a stranger's home. These experiences place people with dementia in vulnerable and unsafe conditions, and these concerning behaviors make it very difficult for family caregivers to cope. I'm interested in the effects that caregiving has on the mental health of the caregiver, because their health is important too, but often gets overlooked. Caregiving occurs in the family environment, so how do family and patient factors influence caregiver mental health? I analyzed data from 106 participants representing 23 of 50 states and asked them questions concerning 3 categories. First, dementia severity. Did caregivers who reported less severe symptoms in their loved ones experience better mental health? Second, family functioning. Did better communication, cohesion, and balance in family roles relate to better caregiver mental health? Third, caregiving attitudes, specifically whether caregivers who reported less emotional over-involvement and criticism towards their loved one experienced better mental health. And this was important because high emotional over-involvement and criticism is very strongly linked to worse patient outcomes in many conditions, including dementia. So if this were significant, it could mean that targeting these could lead to improvements for both. All of these factors were significantly related to caregiver mental health, even when accounting for each other's significance. Interestingly, higher patient symptom severity was related to better caregiver mental health. One hypothesis is that patients who are more symptomatic are also more docile and easier to care for, but that requires further research. In addition, better family functioning and lower levels of emotional over-involvement and criticism were related to better caregiver mental health. Caregivers do so much for their loved ones, and their efforts help society as well. We need to be better prepared to care for them. So, what's next? Developing family-centered interventions that focus specifically on promoting family cohesion and reducing detrimental attitudes such as emotional over-involvement and criticism can be beneficial not only to reducing caregiver mental health difficulties, but also to improving patient well-being. Thank you.
The next competitor is Victor Manuel Rubio Carillo. He is a PhD student in the Frost School of Music. The title of his thesis is A Musical Breathing Approach with Guitar Performance. His advisor is Dr. Stefan Jinsky.
A generation of good breathers will emancipate the world forever. Poetic, no? I read this in an 18th century book. And despite the mysticism of this statement, if you think about it, you still have not tried this. Breathing, a fundamental measure of existence. Something we do 25,000 times a day. Yet how much attention do we really give it? The planetary trend towards well-being deals extensively with breathing, its rhythmical nature. Everything we know about the cosmos is rhythmical. As musicians, we spend our whole lives understanding ways to create rhythm. In this study, we applied a musical control to the breathing system. This is the musical breathing. And since we are all musicians by birth, here is our main musical instrument, our breathing. Here's how we communicate our existence, our breathing. We tested the whole classical guitar department here at the Frost School of Music. We matched them by skill level and then randomly assigned to an experimental or control group. The experimental group, they were trained to apply this musical breathing while performing. What do you think happened when we compared the results of the post-test? Well, not only did the experimental group perform better, but all the measures of mental well-being were significantly higher. They reported feeling more optimistic, more useful, more energetic, more confident, more relaxed. See, if we can be more relaxed, we will be more peaceful. If we are more peaceful, our benevolent nature will be able to flourish. will fulfill no need to engage in conflict and destruction. Here is the most powerful musical instrument that has been given to us by the cosmos, our breathing.
The next competitor is Stefano Chang. He is a PhD student in the Miller School of Medicine. The title of his dissertation is Neuromodulation to Enhance Locomotion in a Large Animal Model of Thoracic Spinal Cord Injury. His advisors are Dr. Brian Noga and Dr. James Guest.
Imagine you're vacationing in Hawaii and you're surfing on Waikiki Beach. You finally get behind that big wave, but you've misjudged its speed and your feet tumble over your head as you wipe out. Oh well, you'll get the next one, right? Unfortunately for Mr. B, whom I looked after during my residency, that tumble left him paralyzed below the neck and changed his life forever. We take it for granted, but imagine if you couldn't just get up and walk where you wanted to go. Gait disorders are common, and it's not just with spinal cord injuries. By age 70, 1 in 3 of us will have a gait problem. My research focuses on using electrical neuromodulation to enhance gait. Now, the big problem in spinal cord injury is the limited ability of the central nervous system to regenerate. With neuromodulation, rather than focusing on regeneration, the goal is to augment the activity of surviving neurons to maximize function. And in fact, most spinal cord injuries do have sparing of fibers. For my project, I used a pig model of spinal cord injury, which is being increasingly recognized as a necessary link between rodent studies and human clinical trials based on similarities in size, anatomy, and responses to injury. And in this model of injury, I stimulated 2 different areas to enhance gait. First, a brainstem command center for gait called the midbrain locomotor region, or MLR, which relays signals to the spinal cord to activate gait. And 2, the lumbar spinal cord, where the circuits that produce gait are located. My hypothesis was that I could augment descending signals through spared neurons by stimulating the MLR, while at the same time stimulating locomotor circuits below the injury to enhance their receptivity to the descending signals. I found that after injury, spinal cord stimulation enhanced muscle activity significantly and restored weight bearing, while MLR stimulation increased range of motion and improved limb coordination. Combining these stimulations combined these benefits. I'm excited to say that our efforts have led to an FDA-approved trial to try MLR stimulation in Parkinson's patients with gait dysfunction. Back in residency, I remember telling Mr. B not to give up, and that one day scientists would find a way to help him walk again, to which he'd sarcastically replied, "Yeah, when pigs fly." If I could talk to Mr. B today, I'd tell him no, when pigs walk. Thank you.
The next competitor is Jeff Peterson. He is a PhD student in the College of Engineering. The title of his dissertation is Shining a Light on Corneal Infection. His advisor is Dr. Jean-Marie Perel.
One of the most important and integral parts of our everyday lives. Yet for 700,000 people around the world every year, their vision is threatened by corneal infection. Now, normally these infections are just treated with antimicrobial eye drops, but those don't always work. If you get a fungal infection in your cornea, you have a 1 in 3 chance of failing medical therapy entirely. That can mean losing your vision or losing your whole eye. So to prevent this, doctors will often perform an emergency corneal transplant, which means surgically removing that infected cornea and replacing it with a donor cornea. However, even this only still has about a 50-50 chance of succeeding in the long term because the infection can simply creep back into that donor cornea. So in response, our laboratory has been developing an alternative approach called Rose-Bengal Photodynamic Antimicrobial Therapy, or Rose-Bengal PDAT for short. Rose-Bengal PDAT works by taking a photosensitive dye, Rose-Bengal, and putting it in the eye. Then you shine green light on it, and that reaction generates singlet oxygen, which is a highly reactive form of oxygen toxic to most microbes. The preliminary results, both in the Petri dish and in patients, have been really promising. 72% of patients that we've treated experimentally have been able to avoid that emergency corneal transplant procedure. However, the protocol is actually based on the protocol for an FDA-approved therapy meant for stiffening the cornea, not actually for treating corneal infection. Therefore, the protocol we have right now isn't optimized. In order to optimize our protocol, we need to know how much singlet oxygen is being produced. Right now, we know how much dye we put in, we know how much light we put in, but we actually don't know how much singlet oxygen we're getting out of the therapy. Therefore, for my PhD project, I've created a singlet oxygen dosage measurement system, which is capable of measuring the infrared light from singlet oxygen directly. This data is then fed into a predictive model which will tell us the protocol parameters, i.e. the amount of dye, the amount of light, and how it's applied, specifically for each patient. In this way, we can optimize the efficacy and the efficiency of the therapy and hopefully improve patient outcomes while minimizing the number of treatments we need to give and also the amount of time we apply those treatments for. And hopefully, one day down the road, tens of thousands of patients who would have otherwise gone blind will now get a second chance at sight. Thank you.
The final competitor is Daniela Karrueche Marquetta, a PhD student in the College of Arts and Sciences. The title of her thesis is Our Socio-Environmental Indicators Related to Weight Status. Her advisor is Dr. Patrice Saab.
In this country, 1 in 3 kids are either overweight or obese. And we keep telling them to eat right and be physically active. But what if that's not all that matters? Our health is more than who we are as individuals. It's also determined by where we live, our access to healthy food, community resources, and the stress in our environment. However, the role that the environment plays in shaping our health behaviors is often overlooked. Our health habits are firmly established by the time we're teenagers, and teenagers spend the majority of their time in school, which becomes a second home. So for my master's thesis, I wondered, does where we go to school matter for our weight? What aspects of the school are important, and do they matter above and beyond our diet, exercise, time spent in front of a screen, or those other factors we're born with, like our sex or ethnicity? And I found that schools with higher socioeconomic status or higher SES were related to lower weight. School SES is an index of the resources readily available to students during the day. It reflects funding, school lunch quality, peer quality, and overall school climate, which can all impact weight. Schools in low SES communities may be also facing a greater number and severity of stressors than their counterparts in wealthier neighborhoods. However, I also found that schools with more reported stress were also associated with lower weight. And how can that be? Doesn't stress make you reach for the candy bar? Well, while stress can lead to weight gain, it can also lead to weight loss through the release of certain stress hormones, which inhibit our hunger cues, which may explain why you forget to eat lunch on a really busy day. While contrary to my expectations, these findings suggest that the perceived stress that comes with an overwhelming learning environment may be impacting our bodies differently than the chronic stress caused by poverty. In other words, not all stress is created equal. The tale of a student that's worried about grades, exams, and assignments may not read the same as one who's unsure of their next meal or doesn't know if they can walk home safely from school. Consequently, weight status is not solely the result of individual action, but is also related to these environmental factors. However, our environment is seldom our choice, but rather the product of many decisions that came before us by our parents, community leaders, and policymakers. In a country where 1 in 3 kids is either overweight or obese, it is our responsibility to create conditions in which students can be healthy. Regardless of what kind of stress students are experiencing, school programs should focus on stress management and coping skills and efforts to alleviate stress symptoms that could be adversely impacting adolescents. And lastly, resources should be allocated toward bridging the equity gap among public schools so that every child has access to a healthy learning environment with safe places to play, healthy foods to eat, and emotional support staff for students so that their second home may be a healthy one. Thank you.
So that concludes the competition component of our event. Please join me in giving a round of applause to all of our competitors. At this time, the judges are going to finalize their scoring sheets. We are going to put up a slide for the People's Choice Award, so please take out your mobile devices. Please only vote once. The code is up there, and then when you're done, I invite you to move to the back of the room to join in the networking and the reception, and then we will reconvene to announce the winners. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Alvarez, and she is going to announce the winners. When your name is called, please come up to the front, to the stage, and be acknowledged.
Good evening, everyone. I think we could take a sigh of relief now. I don't have 3 minutes. Okay, so starting off with the People's Choice, with a unanimous vote, well, very high vote, Michael T. Connelly. So come up. He will also be receiving $250. Here, your one. I'll pass it. Okay. Yeah, just stand here and pass it. Okay. For runner-up, who is also receiving $250, we have Stefano Chang. Congrats. Okay. And for the first place, winning $500 and the trophy to be displayed in the department of which they represented will be, oh my gosh, you're listening? Okay, whew, okay, just making sure. Benjamin Borenstein. Let's give another hand to the winners.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to invite Dr. Perino back up. She's going to recognize our contributors to this event.
So we'd like to thank our partners. I believe Joanna from the Writing Center was here, or April Mann. Here, Joanna, please come down. The Writing Center was available to students to make their talks more concise. They're wonderful partners in helping graduate students. Thank you very much, Joanna. I'd also like to recognize from Topple Career Center, Carly Smith and Ismaris Ocasio, who sat with many of the presenters and gave them feedback. I think I saw Ismaris here a little bit earlier. Is she here? Well, a big hand, and we will give them their basket tomorrow. And finally, we'd like to recognize our friends at the libraries, including Chase Bartholomew. I think I saw Dean Ekman here today, and if not, Dr. Cameron Riopel. Will you please come and accept the gift basket on behalf of the libraries? And thank you for all you do for grad students. Thank you. And thanks again to all the advisors and faculty.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to invite all of the competitors to the front. We have certificates of participation and little gifts of recognition for your participation. And then I invite everyone else to network in the back and continue enjoying the reception. Thank you for being here tonight.